Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to SHEDcast number 17 on the 8th of July 2020. My name is Marcel and I'm joined here by Henry from Norfolk. Good afternoon, Henry.
Good afternoon, Marcel.
So good to see you. Thank you for joining us on today's SHEDcast. It is a bit of a weird week because in the background, happening right now as we speak, there happens to be SHEDfest going on. If you're a shedder and you don't know about SHEDfest, these 3 days this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so 7th to the 9th of July, the UK Men's Shed Association is running SHEDfest 2020 online. So it's all this streaming stuff like we're doing here. And actually, as we speak, that's happening in the background. But we're here and we thought we'd keep to our schedule and run out another SHEDcast. And some of them might be joining us in a bit. We'll see how it goes. But it's all a bit lively, shall we say? Lively.
Yes. Well, I managed a quick cup of tea between appearing on SHEDfest just now, as were you.
Yeah.
So here we are. As you say, it's all a bit surreal.
It is a bit manic, isn't it? If I wanted a job in TV production, I should be somewhere else. Are you drinking? Have you got one with you?
I'm fine. I'm supplied.
Skipper. Okay. Nice. That's appropriate. We'll get to that later. I'm in the I Love My Grandma mug.
Gosh, is she still alive?
No, sadly not.
No.
My grandma and my gran died quite a few years ago now, but do love them dearly. But yeah, in fact,
it is as one gets older, I think one gets more and more affectionate towards your grandparents. Yeah.
True that. Yeah, and your parents and
yeah.
Is that the same for adults and their children? Their parents and their children.
I think it's a bit more full on when you're a parent. And I should imagine, and I don't know, that going through this COVID would have been more full on than ever.
Yeah.
I should think finding the space to stand back and love rather than being full on occupied is hard to come by. But I don't know.
Yeah, true that. I've heard comments from parents who are touting new respect for people who homeschool, because they're doing it all the time. That includes us, as it happens, but also new respect for teachers having to deal with their kids for many hours of the day.
Yeah.
So we're getting some messages in from the Facebook. I mean, Dan says, "Yay!" And he's just excusing himself, sort of, that he's not all here today. He's sort of dashing between here, and in a while there's a Zoom social for SHEDfest. So, people coming and people going. And then he also commented that Henry gets about a bit. Yeah.
Yes. Only today, Dan.
All the rest of the time, it's just deathly silent. Yeah. So to contribute to the show, just do the jazz hands routine on your keyboard. Send us a comment on YouTube or Facebook. It comes in here, and if it's clean and something appropriate, then we'll slap it up on screen. If you've got questions for Henry, then please do share those. Other housekeeping. Well, no housekeeping, but let's introduce Henry. Should we start with where you're from, Henry? I've got a groovy map. You can talk over the top of this, I think. Yeah.
Sure.
Let's stick that up over. Come on, computer.
Well, the first thing to say, and the most important. Yes, you disappeared, Marcel. Yeah, he was asking me if I was likely to have difficulties with IT, and he's gone.
Thank you, Henry. Thanks for holding the fort. That is, you're right. I just heard you talking about IT. He's gone. Yeah, it happens. It happens. Let's see if we can do that again, shall we? I've got a little map which we should be able to talk over the top of. You can tell us about where you are.
Okay, well, the most important thing to say here that was originally I came from right the way nearly off that map down in Portsmouth, where I was born.
Okay.
Behind the gasworks while the Luftwaffe were busy.
Yikes.
It's good they were rotten aimers, really, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But long story short, I married a delightful Norfolk girl, and here I am. Norfolk girls have a very strong homing instinct. And the number of guys who've been dragged from halfway around the world back to Norfolk is, legion, really.
There's some comment there about being good birds.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Well, a good woman will drag you further than a cannon will fire you.
That's good. I've not heard that before. Yeah, thank you.
So I'm 5 miles south of Norwich.
Okay.
What was a small village and is growing apace, and some refer to it as becoming a sort of dormitory for Norwich. There's a lot of new build going on. So a lot of new people coming in. Mm-hmm. And not a lot in the way in facilities. The facilities are sort of playing catch up, really. But we've got a cracking community centre now, a very good library. We've got a voluntary group who run film nights, and very good they are too. Ice creams, 50p. And they have a lot of stuff going on there. There's also an awful lot of community groups, different interest groups. Quite lively, actually. Yeah, you needn't. Well, apart from COVID, you needn't be in any night of the week. There's always something going on.
Very good. Does it suffer from that struggle of being quite close to Norwich? And so there's that discussion of, do we really need that here? Because it's all in Norwich. It's all in Norwich.
No, not really. It's got its own identity. I recently sat for half my life. No, it wasn't. I think it was best part of 2 years on a panel addressing future planning for the village. I'm not on the parish council, I hasten to add, but I got my nose in so many corners that they decided to ask me. And there was a real move to keep that distinctiveness going, to keep a gap between us and Norwich, and for us to have our own shops, our own infrastructure, so that we weren't dependent. There's a core of older residents who walk around the village, use the buses to get into the city, but very often they hop on the bus into the city, do a bit of shopping and hop back. They're sort of not city people. It's a place to go to, do something and get out of.
Gotcha. Interesting stuff. Now, Poringland and District Shed. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Poringland.
Well, yes and no. It's more Poringland.
Poringland. Okay. Where does that come from?
Yeah, nobody knows. Ing is I believe is woodland. Yeah, it's the people of Por. And that could be the name of a local chieftain or a locality. Some people say it does actually mean poor because it's odd geography here. We're a cap. We're quite high up for Norfolk. We're at 50 meters, and it's Poringland Heath. Very poor soil.
Okay.
Doesn't grow much.
Very interesting.
So everybody says that Norfolk's flat. Well, no, not quite. It's flat where it's been reclaimed. Yarmouth Way is very flat, but the rest is quite undulating. So we're on there's a number of rivers running through. So we're on the River Valley. I also wear another hat. I chair the South Norfolk Tree Warden Network. So That's about 80 of us spread across South Norfolk, and we're all gung-ho about trees and planting trees and protecting trees. So, yeah.
That's good.
Although I'm not from here, I'm kind of plumbed in.
Most excellent. Well done. That's a big thing, isn't it? Some people relocate but never really embed themselves.
Well, and then they complain that the locals aren't welcoming.
Yeah, we get that in Guernsey. Actually, there's been a very public case recently where some incoming people have absolutely kicked off at the locals, and yeah, vileful, vitriolic posts on Facebook about the fried food eating, beer drinking locals on her doorstep.
Well, that'd make her friends then.
It's not the way to go about it, is it? Oh man. Anyway, that's another story. So you've sent me a video here of Poringland shed. Should we run that and just flesh people out as to what your shed looks like?
Sure.
Morning everybody, my name's Henry Gowman. I'm chair of Poringland Shed and also UK Men's Shed Ambassador for Norfolk, and I'm just going to give you a look around the our shed and to explain what we did this morning to comply with all the COVID requirements to enable us to open. And this will probably be the last you'll see of my COVID non-haircut. So here we are in a very rural and rustic location, and we share this with a small holding, so we fight for space a bit. So tucked in here is a rudimentary hand washing station, where the guys are asked to wash their hands before they pitch up at the shed. We've put up some additional workstations outside. One of these here's got a sail on it at the moment. There's another workbench there, and then we have a separate outshoot as a metalworking shed. We put these sails up here, rigged them up. Sails were donated for an outside seating cafe area. So I'm just going to walk you around inside as to what we got in the way of procedures. There's not a huge amount of work going on here today. There's mainly chatting, catching up and exchanging COVID related tales. But on arrival, people have to stop here, and this is up all the time, so you must stop at the entrance before proceeding. Just don't walk in on anybody, and then you'll face straight away with more requests and warnings. We've kept the windows open. We've got our ventilation system going at the top, and we've got the back door open as well, so that there's a full draft of air going through. People have to sign in, so we keep a record of who's here in case we have to do contact tracing. We've got an automatic temperature thermometer jobby. The floor is marked up with signage and direction, and we've got a map here of the layout. We do have a cafe, but it's a tight squeeze in here normally, so with COVID we just wouldn't be getting the space, so that's why we've gone outdoors. And everywhere there are reminders and notices and hand sanitizer stations, so it's a new normal. But I just hope that everybody can get to grips with it. We've got a good turnout this morning, so I'm quite hopeful that it will become natural and we'll all settle into it. So there you are, guys. I appreciate that not every shed is as spacious as ours, but it gives a good idea of what can be done.
Very good to see. Thank you for sending that through, Henry.
Yeah, you're welcome, Marcel. It's quite odd seeing it from other people's eyes as you're filming. It's interesting. Yeah. So the peacocks, there's a load of peacocks around. We've got geese around, and we've got heavy horse around, and chickens around. So yeah, it is rural. Yeah.
Lovely, absolutely lovely. you were just on the SHEDfest channel with me, and you were on a panel talking about unlocking the shed. You've just unlocked your shed, as we've just seen, and how has that transition been for you from lockdown?
The difficult part really was finding the information and pulling the information together and making it suit us or suit our operation. So, and then trying to suss out the window, the day that the shed could open. So 8.Jul wasn't about to hop up and say, sheds can open today or next week. We had to look at other things that were opening. So about a month before, the government were talking about a roadmap, which I looked at, and there seemed to be a possible window opening on the 4th of July for cafes and cinemas and bits and bobs and community centres.
Yeah. And
I thought, well, the nearest we're going to get to is a kind of amalgam between a cafe and a community centre. So Norfolk County Council helpfully published some information for their community centres to be ready to open. So not a cut and paste thing, and made it suit us really. So then publicised it to the guys who we'd kept in contact all the way through COVID. We've got a website which we were doing frequent postings on, but we also set up a WhatsApp group which was lively with insults and inappropriate videos and stuff.
Wonderful.
Like that. And I was just a bit chary about how many guys would come along, but 10 turned up on Saturday. We didn't do a lot in truth, but there was a lot of talking, a lot of wandering around, a lot of looking, a lot of sussing stuff out. And then that same number turned up on Tuesday. So I think we're good to go. And as word spreads, but there are some people who are shielded or have partners who are shielded. And understandably, they're a tad more reticent. But the thing I said to our trustees, the things we talked about really, was that the shed is very much needed by the guys that come. You know, the feedback that we get ordinarily from wise partners and guys themselves are things like, I don't know what I'd do without the shed. I'd have nothing to get up for without the shed. Or I know it's shed day because he's out of the bed, washed, dressed, not looking forward to the day. And other people saying, without exaggeration, saying the shed has been the saving of me. So I knew that there was a need for the shed without the additional isolation that had been enforced by COVID, and that we should open up just as soon as we could to provide the facility. So, yeah,
that's fair. How many guys would you have been seeing before lockdown?
On a ordinary day, we get somewhere about 15 or so. Sometimes we've had 20, which is a tad crowded, which is all right if it's not lockdown. If it's not distancing and all that kind of stuff. On our books, we've got 55 members. We frequently ask. Not all of those come, and not all of those that do come every time. Depends if they're doing a project. But there's a core, I suppose, of 15 to 20 people that come a lot. The others come out of the woodwork if you ask. You know, got something to do. We need help with this, that, the other. So from guys who didn't know each other at all, it's become quite a family. And guys support each other outside of the shed as well. There's, you know, friendships have formed, sort of informal network has developed, and there's a lot of chat going on, and yeah, made a big difference to people's lives.
That's wonderful to hear. I'm getting quite a weird echo back from your your device, whenever I utter something, it comes back like it's a rumble of thunder.
I'm getting pingings like a out of tune guitar from you, so
That could be me. Yeah.
there may be a thunderstorm over the North Sea or something.
Now, in that little video you sent, there were some photographs. Sorry, there was just that little snippet at the start. Outside, you've put up some sails, and we got some photographs.
You're frozen to me, Marcel.
There you go. You kindly said.
All right.
Yep,
Okay.
I'm back online, I think, now.
Yep.
Just my computer going for a funny 5 minutes. So you were given some, did you say it was jib sails?
Yeah, these are jibs from A-class yachts, which are racing yachts. So they've have quite large sails, and these are the jib sails. So this is the sail that you have at the sharp end. And we're going to talk about the wherry later, I think. But anyway, I've got some associations down at the Broads, and I've kept some friends down at the Broads. And when it became clear that we weren't going to be able to run a cafe indoors because of not possible to distance properly, I thought, well, we've got to rig something up outside. So I put a shout out. I was looking for a tilt or a tarpaulin, some such. And a chum came back to me and said, I might be able to get hold of some sails for you. I said, whoa. And so these were donated by Eastwood Whelpton Yard down at Upton on the Broads. And so we rigged what we're looking at here are metal framing for stacking that we had in surplus. So we put those in at a jaunty angle to give them a sort of nautical lean. And we tensioned the sails over them.
Nice one. Are those posts concreted in as well?
They are, yeah.
So it's not going anywhere.
It's not anytime soon. Well, not until we leave the shed anyway. Our landlord might want them gone then.
Yeah.
So we then put up a batten and put in some eye bolts and connected the foot of the sail, the broad bit, and then took the peak over the top. The weight down there were 32-pound weights, but now we've put a horizontal bar across and we've put eye bolts and shackles on, so it's much easier to locate.
Great idea.
So there's
is it relatively easy then to pop it down if there's a big storm coming?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the idea.
Good.
Yeah, so it worked a treat. So we went to that barn and we were being, I'll say evicted, that's too strong a word really. The guy that was allowing us to be in a forge, his life circumstances changed and he asked us if we kindly go so he could get on with his life. And I went down the road to the pub. One of the guys knew the landlord, had a chat with him and asked him if we could store our stuff there. And after the third or fourth lorry load, he said, how much more stuff can we do? We've got quite a bit yet. So what's this all about then? So I explained about Men's Shed and the ethos behind it. And he said, well, what kind of building are you looking for? I said, well, this barn would be ideal, but he said, well, all your stuff's in there now. You might as well bloody stay.
Brilliant.
So I said, well, what kind of agreement could we reach? He said, what do you mean agreement? I said, well, what are you looking for in the way of rent? He said, I haven't said anything about that, he said, and stuck his hand out and he said, here's your agreement. I don't want any rent. So 2 years later, we're still there. And it's been very amenable. We kind of, quote, pay our way by doing odd jobs for him, fixing things. 5-bar gates have become a specialty of ours. We fixed the dartboard the other day. And anything he wants us to do, we do with some alacrity, really, because he's been so generous to us. But we are looking determinedly for a new venue because it's just a tad precarious. You know, we have no rights, and if he decides to retire, the next landlord may not want this bunch of ancient oiks in his backyard.
Yeah, without sort of long-term contracts and legally binding stuff, you're a little bit fragile position. I can understand that.
Yeah, there's many sheds. There's many sheds in the same position. It's not unusual.
Yeah,
but I'm getting on, and I really want to try and cement the future of the shed before I get too ancient to do anything about it.
Yeah, sure. Now, you've been running, I understand, from about 2014, and I was looking over the gallery that you shared with me on your website. And in fact, I can put the website up on screen just for folks to come and have a look. pdmensshed.org. That's worth a look, and that's where we're going to drop in right now. I'm knowing a little bit more about how your shed has come about in the shed, in that barn, explains some of what we're seeing here. These photographs, we'll skim through all of this, but it's good to see how you've established yourselves over the last 6 years.
Well, yeah, this is a bit painful to look at, really, because this is when we were at the forge, and it had no facilities whatsoever. So we spoke to the district council and their planning department, and they gave us permission to put in what are called tented arch drains to clear away the rainwater coming off the roof.
Okay.
And what we couldn't afford was to connect up with the mains drainage because it was the other side of the road. But so we dug substantial trenches, as you can see here, and put in drainage. And we also reinforced the forge and made it weatherproof and weathertight. And it cemented the guys, really. All those guys that are involved there are still involved now.
Tremendous, yeah. We've got a similar story with some of the guys that are, well, a good majority of the guys working on the Guernsey shed over the last 3 years. The relationships have been built, really great relationships. There was frustration along the way about this isn't moving quick enough, but actually when you come to the realization that we are shedding already,
that's it.
All working on the same project.
Absolutely. I mean, before this, we had we'd been in a scout hut, and again that was on a grace and favour, and they didn't charge us rent, but we completely redecorated and did some refurbishing and helped them build an outdoor canoe store. And a couple of guys said, this is what I came here to do. I said, what did you come here to do then? Well, this and that, nothing, what are you doing it?
Yeah.
It's part of the shed, it's part of the project, Yeah,
I've been talking to Graham Storer from the Whitby sheds, and they've been using a scout hut as well, and done some work on the scout hut, like you say. It's quite a good fit because, of course, the uniformed organisations, be it Scouts or Guides, Boys Brigade, they're often just going to use it in the evenings, possibly on the weekends. When actually, if it's empty during the days, there's a lot of scope for that to be used as a men's shed.
Yeah, our difficulty was in storing projects that were being worked on. You clamped a load of stuff up, and you came back and found it not where you wanted it, and half the clamps off.
Yeah, of course.
So that was a bit difficult, which was what prompted our move, really.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. Dog wants to come and say hello.
Come on, Doggo.
Ruby! Come on, come and say hello.
It was so funny earlier seeing Kate Gordon on the Shedfest group with Doggo in the background. I can't remember what her dog's called.
Yeah.
But let's say hello. There we go.
This is Ruby.
Hello, Ruby.
Who's that? Who's speaking to you? Somebody in there, isn't there?
Good girl.
Somebody in there.
Should I join you? I'll remove that from the screen and then unsolo you, and then we'll go like that so you can see me. Hi, Ruby. Good girl.
What?
Yeah, put me down. not put me down. But,
yeah.
tricky, yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't a painful experience. It was a useful experience, but no, we had to move on. So then we went to the forge, and then from the forge, because of a change in circumstances, we had to move out to the barn.
Mm-hmm.
So we do all kinds of things around the village, including litter picking, as you can see there, and we go to every fair and fete and put up a stall with various things. Yeah. And we have a great line in taking flat pack bird boxes with us, and kids and their parents just love putting them together. So we make money while we're at it. I mean, sheds are always struggling to make some money, and if there's anybody from sheds listening, I have to tell you, every fair we go to, we make no less than 150 quid on either flat pack, I'll find another way of saying that, flat pack bird boxes. We also have a very simple game of bouncing a ball into a bucket at 20p a throw or something. And very rarely do we go to a fair and not somebody turn up the next week or so saying, I saw you at the fair, I thought I'd come along and see what you're about. And we get another member. Very worthwhile doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is one of our members, Carl, refurbishing a bird stand. Get a lot of those as well, given to grandma by a grandchild, and 10, 15 years later is going rotten. It's a bit like Trigger's broom. Some of that is original. The guy on the left there, as you're looking, is Tim. He's an Australian. Not that I hold that against him. He's a grand chap. He actually runs the Norwich shed, but he lives in Poringland, and he wondered why Poringland didn't have a shed of its own. So he put a shout out. Half a dozen guys met in the Royal Oak, and after 4 or 5 pints, we thought it would be a great idea to have a shed in the village. And all those people that met up in the shed, in the pub that night, are still trustees. So Roy in the middle there is our treasurer, and Les on the right. We had no idea, but we were telling stories, as I have a tendency to do, and Les said, can I just go over that again with it? And we were on the same ship at the same time, I think I'm going to say 53 years ago, on an aircraft carrier. He was an engineer, and I was what was colloquially known as a bunting tosser, a communicator. And now I just say I was a bunting, and I put less stress on the tosser. that is because when I was in the Navy, I joined in 59. A lot of main communications was still by flag and semaphore flashing light, and the material that flags are made from is called bunting. And so when you hoisted flags aloft, you were tossing the bunting. And yet, I just thought I'd explain that.
Here you are again. Yeah, thanks for doing that. Small world, eh?
Yeah, small world.
Tremendous.
So this is arriving at the barn, and we started with a pretty rough gravel floor inside. So we put up walls. This is our electrician, bottom right there, just disappearing, working on repairing an electronic chessboard. Because there's no space indoors, and a peacock going by, because we were working on laying the floor, he went outside to fix it. This is for a client, somebody asking us to do a job.
Nice.
Somebody said, we need a window in here. We haven't got much light. We can put one right in across there. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll go and have a word with the landlord. Now, Fortunately, the landlord said yes, because by the time I got back, this was the hole.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those reciprocating saws. Very powerful tool.
Yeah.
Oops, I've gone all unzoomed. How do I? There we go. And it's skiffled off down the page. Sorry about that. So this is you putting the floor in?
Yeah, this is Tim, retired builder. We couldn't have done much of this without Tim, bless him. Yeah, put in the floor. Well, first of all, they laid joists and then lay the floor. At the further end, because of a change of levels, we put in concrete, partly because we were thinking of having that end as the metal workshop.
Right, yeah.
But things developed apace. So that's the state of the floor on the right, as we found it.
Oops. Yeah, that's substandard.
Yeah. That would fail building regs, wouldn't it?
Doesn't meet code.
No.
Open day?
So we threw an open day and asked everybody to come along with, bring their other halves and family and friends and stuff like that to see where we were. It's all very convivial and spreads the word. And all these ladies, they belong to other clubs and they talk about it. This was the map of possibly where we were going to have a new shed. But I can't talk about it too much in public. I can only say it's come to a grinding halt.
Okay.
And we're now looking elsewhere.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of time and effort's gone into this. It may well come to fruition. Fingers crossed that it will. It's not.
Without goading you on, does it involve councils and local government?
Yes.
Okay, so
but it's not. It's not to do with that. The council were very much on side. That
okay, great.
when the pond is shown in the left centre at the top, and there's an orange blob underneath it, that's where men's shed still may go. And to the left of it, there's allotments, and I've bagged 2 allotments for the shed.
Great idea.
As a diversification of interest, But its main purpose is to be a new 4G football pitch for the village team, who are in some league beyond their village status. And if they're to remain in the league or go up in the league, they need a better pitch, something along those lines.
Okay, right. Very good. Well, I hope that does actually come off for you. It's very easy to get sort of swept away by the possibilities, the ideas, and the concepts, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you've got to stay grounded, really. Until you go, you are where you are, and you've got to keep working at what you're doing. So in many ways, wisely or not, I tend not to talk. They're going to, if the guys listen to this, they'll find out more about their shed than they ever. I tend to deal with the future kind of privately, really, because there's no point in getting guys excited about something that may not happen, or disappoint them.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So there we are, laying the floor in the shed. Load of concrete went in there pretty much to stabilize it, really. It was too uneven to lay as a wooden floor. So there's machinery starting to go in and starting to become a workshop.
That's good. I like this little sequence.
Yeah.
I was looking at this yesterday.
This is pretty much like the window, really. We could do with a door in there, because every time we have to open the door, we have to open up half the barn. We could put a door just there.
Pop.
There it is.
That's the great thing about working with a wooden barn, is that It's very fixable and
instantly adaptable.
yeah, very, very good. Yeah, much of what we're dealing with in Guernsey is concrete. So yeah, it's a bit of a game.
What started the conversation was all the heat going out of the barn every time the door opened. And one of the guys had just made a wood burner to take all the spare offcuts and stuff like that.
Excellent.
Which pumps out a lot of heat, yeah. So here we are at yet another fete.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Ah, yes, East Anglian Children's Hospice have moved from where they were previously and have now set up in our village. And they came along to us and said, could you help us? We've been given permission to have a float in the Lord Mayor's parade in Norwich. And the company have said they provide a trailer. And could you do the rest, basically? And when I say help, yeah.
You mean do?
Do. That was it, yeah. So I don't know what else you might have there, whether they're clearer on some other photographs, but the theme of the procession was circus. And my initial thought was, well, we'll have a big elephant leading the float, an enormous, great big elephant. But somebody said, oh, you can't do that. It's cruelty to animals and this, that, and not men, other people involved in this. And I thought, well, I don't know. Anyway, on the day, blow me down, they had a real live elephant leading the parade, but yeah, never mind. So we made, we cutouts and then painted the cutouts. And we downloaded shapes and things from the internet and cut them out. And then there they are working in the back of the trailer, slowly getting it sorted for the big day.
Looking like they're working.
Looking like they're working, yeah. I'm pleased to say that most of these figures got repurposed, and there's a play barn down the road, and most of those are now on the walls in the play barn.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes you throw a lot of resources at something, and it's brilliant for what it is, but 3 hours later,
it's redundant. Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, if you can repurpose it, then that's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So these figures, these silhouettes.
Where I am, because every time I zoom in and out, it changes place.
Okay.
Yeah, let's come to these figures.
So this was marking the end of the First World War, and our local photographic club and history club wanted to mark it, and they made an inquiry. I can't remember who it was. It may have been the Imperial War. Somebody was making and selling silhouettes.
Okay.
And there was a steep price. So they said, could we do it? So we got a grant. And the same way as we made the silhouettes for the circus, we made these. So we put the board up, and the projected the image onto the board, drew around the image. There's John drawing around the image.
Perfect.
Cut them out. Bish bash, painted them all black.
Yeah, brilliant.
And they appeared in the War Memorial. And they were very effective.
Good job.
The way people reacted to them was, well, with reverence is the best way I can say it. Because we'd worked on them and we got familiar with them, but we put them up in the churchyard, and people were just really, it did strike home. It was a small village back then, 350 people, and they lost 11 men.
Okay.
So a huge impact really on the small village. Everybody would have known the guys that died.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Yeah, good job. Well done.
So this is us banging the drum. This is in the centre of Norwich. It's called the Forum, amazing modern building. And the central space is used a lot for craft markets and the like, but they also hire it out free for charitable purposes. And we were invited along to bang our drum, show people what we do, tell other organisations what we do. Yeah,
Excellent.
It's a good day.
And I think that's the top of the page. Yeah. Very, very good. Thank you for sharing all that with us.
Yeah,
It sounds like you've been on, well, doesn't sound like it. I can see you've been on an amazing journey. Obviously, the premises question hangs over you, but what's the flavour of your shed? I'm asking everybody this that comes on the Shedcast. Every shed's got a vibe, a certain thing about it. I've talked to some shed, and some people would say, "Oh, it's the woodwork. That's our thing." Other sheds would turn around and say, "Oh, it's the banter." What's the flavour?
Camaraderie. Everybody's pleased to see everybody, and they're all from different walks of life. There is a lot of banter. When we got back on Saturday, one of the guys, there was some Mickey taking going on, and one of the guys said, "Do you know what? This is what I miss most." We've had a big discussion, and it's ongoing. It's not resolved. It's going to be something that is ongoing about women in sheds, and it's a shout out for each shed to make their own decision. But our guys at the moment have said no, we don't want women in sheds. They feel it will spoil the equilibrium, and some women kind of object, especially female social workers. Being kind of right on, but one of them came to the shed and she said she came through the 5-bar gate and she's walking down towards the shed and she said there was a good group of guys outside the shed. She said I could tell they were having a laugh and enjoying themselves, and they turned around and saw me, and she said it was like a bunch of naughty school children. They smartened themselves up and the atmosphere changed. And she said I hadn't got before how a woman appearing on the scene does impact what's happening around a bunch of men. So
Changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
Changes the dynamic. That's right.
Yeah. And I've said it lots of times locally. We're not anti-women, but it just changes the dynamic. In lots of ways, very superficial ways, but also some deep ways. Like you say, that was a very superficial thing. Probably they just see it coming and yep. Yeah, best behaviour, right, boys. Ladies on deck.
I've heard a couple of conversations going on down the shed about some very private things, one of which was about prostate cancer. One guy had the operation and had recovered. The other guy was on his way towards having an operation. And they were painting one of those silhouettes. So they were either side of it painting and talking about this. And I just thought, if there was a woman around, I don't know that conversation would be taking place, because they were going into graphic detail in manly language.
Yeah.
But they were both comfortable about it. And the guy that was going through the operation, or going towards the operation, learned a lot, I think,
Yeah, we've had similar conversations here as well. Where you probably just wouldn't want to talk about it in that way. And of course, we should all be grown up and we should all be able to talk about everything all of the time. But that's not the reality. And we've got to be sensitive to that. And yeah, like you say, that the guy who was going for the operation has got a very different set of personal experience relayed to him that puts him at ease. And that's a very valuable thing.
I think it might change. I mean, most of our members are 60 plus. Most of them 70 plus. So, in 10 years' time, those people that are coming up to that age, if we're still ticking along at that age, and it seems to be the way of it, they'll be bringing a different background with them, and they may be more comfortable around women. They'll certainly be more comfortable with IT and stuff like that. So, yeah, things will change as society changes.
Absolutely, yeah. And it might be that in the meantime, you, as we may well do, have sort of lady shed days or women's shed days and men's shed days, and there's days when it's mixed, but there's still
but
do your own thing.
When we do get our new shed, as we will, we are talking about having a different shed day for ladies or women. And some of the guys are saying, well, I'd be happy to teach them how to use such and such a machine and stuff like that. And ultimately there may come some crossover. So, just to see how it works out.
Yeah, I totally get it. Shall we take a little break, Henry? We always do this thing on the Shedcast of we PKO, put kettle on, and we go for a tea and a wee. So we'll take a short 5-minute break and we'll come back here. I'll see you back here in 5 minutes, but we've got a chance to just put some cheesy music on in the background, recharge the necessaries and ease springs, and we'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Okay, and we're live again. Hi, Henry. Did you manage to recharge?
Both recharge and discharge.
One in, one out. Lovely jubbly. And I'd like to offer you a biscuit, if I may.
Oh, thank you. A virtual biscuit.
Yeah, that's kind of really quite a hollow offer, isn't it? Quite selfish.
It involves quite a long walk and a long swim to get the real one.
It would be, yeah. Bit of an epic trip. Now, here's a little something that folks, unless they know you, perhaps wouldn't know, that you also volunteer with another organisation, hence your skipper mug, I believe.
Yeah.
This is something up your sleeve.
Well, she was the second love of my life, really.
What a beauty.
She's a traditional, I'll say sailing barge, because most people will understand what I mean by that.
Okay.
But she's built in 1898, and she's a wherry, WHERRY. Oak built, solid oak, and unusual for aficionados that may be listening, in that she's not clinker built but carvel built. Clinker is a traditional build ever since Saxon and Viking times with overlapping planks. Carvel is butted. She's the only wherry out of hundreds that were built with butted planks.
So your planks are like this.
That's right.
And the clinker being overlapping.
Would overlap, yeah.
Okay, I've not come across that, or not knowingly.
No, she was built for a brewer in Bungay, and there was a set of locks to go through, and they were quite tight. And the thinking was that maybe she was made like that so she didn't get hung up on the side of the lock. But the other reasoning was that originally her owner wanted her made of steel, but they quickly realized that steel sweats because of the temperature of the water changing as you're coming in from the sea into inland waters, and condensation was spoiling the cargo.
Right.
but he still wanted it to look like it was steel and look like it was modern, and so she had smooth sides through the carvel build. But nobody knows, because no plans were ever kept of any wherry. The only plans that exist of a wherry are of the Albion, and they were built by a marine architect not long ago from taking measurements after the event, as it were.
Okay, I see. Very interesting. I've just found a little bit of video in the background. Should we share that?
Ooh.
And I think you appear in it. Do you know about this?
Crikey, well, maybe.
Let's have a look. Here it comes. And let's play that.
So it's all hydraulic.
Mm-hmm.
No hydraulics. Traditionally crewed by a man and a boy, sometimes his son. So this is coming into Howe Hill at just above Ludham on the River Ant. The mast is built to drop down so you can go under bridges. That's my mate Frosty, who got me the sails. All round good egg. 1,200 square foot of sail there.
That's a lot of cloth.
I'll tell you, it's a lot of weight as well. So she's good fun. Available for hire. And that's how they raise the funds to keep her going.
Gorgeous.
So we have a tender there primarily for health and safety purposes, but that's a lovely shot, isn't it?
Mm.
So that's a wind pump there, guys. It's not a windmill.
Ooh, okay.
That's for shifting water off the marsh.
Very nice. Very nice.
So back in the day, as trade started to fall away, skippers were looking for another way to make a living. So they scrubbed out the holds and were taking people out for trips. And then they then started to convert some of the original wherries with accommodation, and they were called pleasure wherries.
Okay.
There's quite a few of those still around. Well, I say quite a few. There's only about 6 or 7 altogether, I think. One of them was recovered from Paris. It was seen by somebody who knew what it was, moored up on the Seine. And it made an inquiry and said, look, if you ever want to sell that, I'll buy it and I'll take it back to the Broads. It was actually being used as a brothel. So it's still a pleasure wherry. But yeah, no, it was brought back and refitted, and it's still on the Broads now, yeah.
Fascinating. Now, if I'm going to just throw this picture across our faces again, one of the distinctive features of it is the black sail. What's the story behind the black sail, Henry?
Well, ultraviolet light was rotting the sails, as it would, as it still does, except most sails are now made of nylon. But when they were made of cotton and canvas and stuff, it rotted. So they tried various methods of conserving them. So they covered them in oil, fish oil. I mean, a lot of fish oil to be had from Yarmouth and Lowestoft when they were fishing ports. And of course, the rats thought that was very tasty, so they ate the sails. So to keep the rats off, they mixed it with coal dust, of which there was loads, because a lot of the cargoes of the wherries were shifting coal from the ports up into the city. And that had the effect. It kept the sun off and stopped them rotting, and it kept the rats off. But it must have been filthy to handle those sails for a while. And I'm pleased to say now it's simply dyed black.
Okay, fair enough. Very nice. Very nice. I've been up Norfolk Way only a couple of times, and I've never really been out as far as the Broad sort of area. It's something I'd like to do. My son and I are getting into dinghy sailing over here.
Oh, right.
The idea of doing that on protected waters and just drifting between fields and reeds.
Yeah. It's actually quite difficult. I know this sounds bonkers, considering the amount of space that the Broads take up, but it's actually quite difficult to get to see a Broad from the roadside. You've kind of got to get down there out on the boat. At Ludham, next door to where the Albion is moored, is a boatyard called Hunter's Yard, and they hire out dinghies, all mahogany built in the 1930s, and maintained traditionally. Fantastic boats, and if you want to come over for a sailing holiday, that's the place to go.
I'll make a note of that. Very good. Yeah. Quite fancy that. I guess you have all sorts of problems with sort of trees and buildings creating eddies and.
Sailing on the Broads is, I have to say, idiosyncratic, I suppose. You've got it. They are tidal for a start. People think that they're not, but the tide comes in and the tide goes out.
What sort of range do you get in the Broads then?
Places like Reedham and so, about 6 to 8 feet, depending on the set of the moon. Yeah,
it's enough to make a difference.
Yeah. But the direction of the wind will hold the tide up. It won't be exiting across out of Yarmouth. If you're getting an easterly wind, for instance, it'll hold the water back in.
Okay.
And then if you get heavy rainfall, you won't get a tidal rise, you'll get a fresh water rise, and you'll get fresh water running down over an incoming tide underneath. So, yeah, it is. I have to say that every time I went out on the Albion, going over the same waters, it was a different experience. So you was literally sailing by the seat of your pants, really, and making it up as you went along. Yeah.
Excellent. That sounds a bit like SHEDcast and SHEDfest.
Yeah, or life.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's no book to follow, is there?
No, that's right. Yeah, but the Gators respect. I mean, I was just going out for a jolly, taking people. Mind you, they have their challenges, of course. But if you were first of all loading it and unloading it with 40-ton of cargo, and then having to sail this half-submerged log, something else.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, before we joined the stream, you had a beautiful picture of it. Is it still available?
Yeah.
Let's take you full screen so we can see the best of it. Fantastic. That sail makes a really striking shape. Beautiful.
Yeah. So this was just a serendipitous photograph. There's a guy, Mike Page, has a light aircraft, and he flies around and he takes snaps and he sells them and raises money for different charities. And he just happened to be flying overhead, and that was me on my first unaccompanied skippering. So it was my first solo. My wife and I were organising my wife was organising the charters at the time, and I was organising the press and publicity. And the BBC asked if we could take them out sailing for that was for Country File. And the detail they wanted was was to anybody. They wanted confirmation of this, confirmation of that, a certificate of this, a certificate of the other. Blimey! And so Matt Baker turned up with his team, and we have to do everything 3 times over. Would you mind raising the sail again and again and again? But anyway, we're poodling along, and he came back for a chat, and he said, I expect you've been doing this man and boy, Henry. And I thought, if I say, no, this is my first time sailing this on my own, they could ask to go back. So I said, "Wah," and that seemed to suffice, and we carried on. But it just so happened that Mike Page was flying over and took that shot. So you have to know what you're looking at, but you can make out the film crew team and the. See if I can point out the.
I'll put you full screen. There we go.
So just up there is the crew and the boom mic. And yeah, but that was good. But the funny thing was, ITV phoned up and said, "Could we go out for Countrywise?" And I said, "Yeah." They said, "Great, see you on Wednesday." They didn't want this, they didn't want that, they didn't want the other. So when I saw them, and I said, "You didn't want any qualifications or certificates or?" And he said, "Well, no, you're a professional organisation. If you're operating, you're bound to have all those." I thought,
yeah, okay, refreshing.
Yeah, which is all true, but yeah. But no, it was interesting. Met some nice people. Had some fun times. But last year, I reached the age of enforced retirement at 75, and insurance would no longer cover. So,
well, congratulations.
I had to say goodbye.
Do you still get a free ticket if you want to just buddy up?
I've had offers, yeah.
Nice. Super. I guess you probably know around the Channel Islands from your naval days, we get quite a bit of tide around here.
I did a coastal navigation course, and so it was all chart work. And the lecturer used the Channel Islands a lot, sailing from here to there, because of the difficulties and the contrary currents and strong tides and all that. And I can several occasions he'd look over my shoulder and he'd say, "So is that your final route?" And I'd say, "Yeah." He said, "Doomed.
Good luck."
Doomed. But it's one of those things, probably like sailing the Broads. You just get used to it. You just know how it's going to work, and yeah. Either you don't go there, or you go there when it's safe. Yeah,
you can't fight it. It's
no, absolutely. No.
There's places where there's 6 knots of tide going through, and
yeah, no.
Yeah. In a sailing boat, that's not happening.
No. And no hope, is it?
No. And that's not accounting for the wind coming and going and changing direction.
No, that's right. I mean, you start off in the morning with a forecast. There's no resemblance to what's happening locally.
Yeah,
that's particularly true. Particularly true in Norfolk. Get a really strong afternoon onshore breeze. Usually, with sometimes not for inexplicable reasons. And as I said, the tide chart may say one thing, but the wind and the rain will say something else.
Interesting. Well, if I get there, I will most assuredly be dropping you a line and dropping in hello.
You'll be in trouble if you don't.
Thank you. Well, Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, or should we call it a day?
No, I'd just like to encourage anybody that's thinking of setting up a shed to do it. It's not easy, I'll give them that, but it's extraordinarily worthwhile. And we don't do this for prizes, but I'd just like to mention that our shed won a prize last year for the best community group throughout our district, throughout South Norfolk. And that's a compliment to everybody, really. I mean, I wander around the back in the background for the most part, making sure the ship's on course. But it's the guys who make the stuff, who do the stuff. So yeah, no, it's a great accolade. Yeah,
that's fantastic. It's indeed terrific. Over the last couple of days, I've been introduced to, is it Cerro Shed in Wales? I'll get stuck on the names, but there's a shed in South Wales. During lockdown, they as a group have done a huge amount serving their community. Like you say, it's not about awards. It's also not a competition.
No.
If one shed does something, we can all celebrate it. But it's also motivational to say, you don't have to be the same as them, but what are you doing? What can you do?
Yes.
And it's just amazing. I was really quite amazed by what they've been doing in Wales, the gusto which they'd thrown at themselves. They'd been sort of delivering food parcels, but they turned their shed into a whole collection area for supermarkets to drop stuff off, and all with masks on and socially distanced and taking stuff out. One of the stories that came out of that was that he delivered a food parcel to a lady who came to the door with tears in her eyes, and he said something like, "My love, you're welcome," and she said, "Get away! I've been cutting onions."
Excellent.
Yeah, a great leveler, isn't it? So yeah, it's really encouraging, and I've been loving doing this Shedcast thing, meeting with people from up and down the country and beyond, and obviously the Shedfest has multiplied that. So it's really wonderful to meet you, Henry, and
it's been great to meet you, Marcel. And I've been dropping in and out of the Shedfest, and I was listening to the leadership debate this morning, and now, as I said earlier, it's really interesting to listen to everybody's problems and how they've overcome them, what they've done, and the fact that up and down the country there's loads of sheds all in the same boat, all trying to make a success of it, and mainly are. So
despite real problems, we're making headway, and that's a really brilliant testimony to everyone's effort.
No, absolutely, it is.
Brilliant.
Okay, Marcel.
In Guernsey, we don't say goodbye, we say à la prochaine, which means till we meet again.
Till we meet again.
À la prochaine.
You give me a shout if you come to Norfolk.
Roger that, I will do. Bless you. Cheerio.
All the best. Bye-bye.